Good morning and good afternoon, dear participants and speakers. A very warm welcome to another webinar under the Water and Development Partnership Program Phase 2, the DUPC 2. Today we are very pleased and excited to cover the topic of addressing water scarcity in the MENA region through capacity building and partnership. My name is Long Huang, Program Manager from the DUPC. My pleasure to welcome you all to our event today. To open the webinar, I would like to invite Mr. Brahim Jara, Senior Business Development Manager for Middle East and Africa of Kabi, to say a few words of welcome. The floor is yours, Mr. Brahim.
Thank you very much, Long, and thank you all for allowing me to be here with you and to address really an important and vital issue that we are living around the world, and in particular in the MENA region. I personally come from Tunisia, and I can feel the drought, the global warming, water scarcity, and the whole region, not only the MENA region and Africa, all these conflicts. And we all know the impact of water and the importance of water. With water, we have better agriculture, more crops, better life, less conflicts. Less water, we're going to have water scarcity, issues with agriculture and crops and feeding less people around the world. This will have impact also on inflation, prices, and everything. And for that reason, and because of this important matter that we need to discuss and try to build together around the world, and today we're talking about the MENA region, I'm happy to be and moderate this topic today and be with you. And I'll give the floor to Long again to try to introduce our guests. And I'm happy to be with you to moderate this event. Thank you, Long. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brahim, for the opening words. To continue, I would like to briefly introduce our speakers and a very interesting program for the coming 1.5 hours. Today we have 3 short presentations of about 10 minutes each, followed by a panel discussion. And all these activities centered around the key theme of capacity building and partnerships for solving water scarcity in the MENA region. We will start with a presentation about the MENA water scarcity community, the MENA WSC, by Rehab Amosen, a science journalist. Next, we will have Professor Felix Metalo, University of Dar es Salaam. Felix will talk about capacity building under the Nile Basin Capacity Building Network Foundation, the NBCBN, and some case study on water scarcity. After that, we will have a last presentation by Serene El-Vata from the UNDP Egypt. She will be talking about her personal experience with the Capacity Development Scholarship and the follow-up activities that she's now carrying on. After the presentation, we'll move on to the Q&A and panel discussion with all speakers. Again, Mr. Brahim will help us with convening the discussion. We are very pleased to be joined by 2 additional panelists from IHE Delft, Dr. Sjaak-Jan van Andel and Dr. Shetha Maski, who are also with us now. We thank our speakers and convener for taking time and joining us today. We look forward to an interactive discussion and very much encourage you to post your questions and remarks to our speakers. We will be collecting these questions and our convener will pick them up with speakers during the second part of the webinar. You are very much welcome also to introduce yourself in the chat box. And so without any further ado, I would like to invite Rehab to give her presentation. Rehab, would you like to have your screen shared or would you like us to share your screen?
I will try to share it. If I wasn't very successful in this, I will let you share it if you can.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the meantime, allow me to introduce Rehab. Rehab Amosen is a science journalist, and she is the moderator of the MENA water scarcity community. In 2021, she took home 3 prizes from the Nile Media Award ceremony, and she is also a science media trainer. Rehab is also the co-author of the open access ebook called Water Conflicts and Cooperation, a Media Handbook. Please go ahead, Rehab.
Okay. Before introducing the community, I would like to add a small thing that this book was part of IHE Delft, a project done by IHE Delft and organized by IHE Delft. So I will start my presentation. Introducing MENA Water Scarcity Community, MENA WCC, SC. The community, the Water Scarcity Community, is an initiative that was launched by IHE Delft Institute for Water Education and hosted by SciDev. We started this initiative in September 2022. Through the community, we that is represented as a Facebook group, we do a lot of activities. We open discussions, we organize webinars and share webinars that is organized by other institutions related to the topic water scarcity in the MENA. We also do a face-to-face meetings. We were able to take some valuable steps trying to bridging ground or facilitate the communication between our members. As I said, we open discussions, we share a lot of opportunities, such as fellowships, trainings, and scholarships, webinars. I would like in some point to share the Facebook group and let you have a look at what we are doing. The community group is private. Only members who got accepted by the moderator, which is me, joined the group. Members are encouraged to share their knowledge and ask questions and participate in discussions, which we really have. Since we opened this platform, we noticed a great amount of discussions and very interesting discussions between countries, between countries and sometimes inside the country itself. So, and this is what we are aiming at. The community launch was announced through many platforms, such as IHE Delft Facebook page and a lot of newsletters from SciDev, MENA, and other social media platforms. We received 600 membership requests, but we are trying to be very selective with our members. So we accepted only something a little bit above 350 members now. Through this platform, we organized, we hold a lot of activities, but I will give you a glimpse on the webinars that we organized. We organized a webinar before COP27 on the water in the agenda of COP27. It was a successful webinar. We invited representative of ICARDA, EMI, and other institutions, and we noticed how this webinar attracted a lot of participants and opened a great discussion after the webinar. We received a lot of questions. Our second webinar, we organized it, I think, last month. It was on groundwater. Not last month. This one is a little bit, I think, yes, last month. On groundwater in the MENA region and the issue, we invited Dr. Mohammed Dawood. He works for Abu Dhabi in Abu Dhabi in United Arab Emirates. And he specialized in groundwater, and he has a book on the status of groundwater in the MENA region. We also have another webinar that recorded a big success. This webinar was on conflict, water issue in the conflict zone. We invited 3 speakers from Yemen, Sudan, and Palestine. All of them speak about the water issue under the conflict and war in the war zone. And this webinar was very special. It held a big discussion, and after the webinar, we received a lot of positive comments. We also, after the webinars, we normally do press releases and spread it through our community. We cover it through writing a news on or a blog on SciDev and publish it in Arabic. We also coordinating some other webinar this year. We identify some members to be our next host to this to the community after the end of our contract with IHE Delft. We cannot say the names yet, but we identified 3 different enthusiastic active members to be the host. The application are from all the application we received are from all the MENA regions country, and as you can see, those are the countries that we receive application from. The community attract males and female, and we are very keen to have a gender balance, but yet, as you can see, not there yet. We need to put some efforts related to encouraging women to be more active in the group. Among our members, Dr. Isam Hijji, he is a scientist at NASA. Dr. Maha Zoubi, she works for IMI, Global Research Initiative and Sustainable Law. And Dr. Jawad Al-Kharaz, he's the Executive Director of Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, RCRE. Dr. Khalid Abu Zaid, he worked for the Arab League and for Arab Water Council and many other institutions. This is not all our members, but I'm sorry for this, but those activities are already, some of them are already done, and we are waiting for one other activity related to initiatives, water-related initiatives in the MENA region that will be held next week. So thank you for your time, and looking forward for your contribution and to join the group and to contribute with us in the community and the platform. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rehab, for a very interesting and inspiring presentation about your community. I see that there are already questions and remarks also in the chat. We will save all these later for the Q&A and for the panel discussion. I would like to invite you all participants to introduce yourself, but also to post questions for our speakers in the chat box or in the Q&A function. Moving next, I would like to introduce the second presentation from Professor Felix Mutalo. Felix is a professor from the Department of Water Resources Engineering, University of Dar es Salaam. He has worked extensively on various topics relating to water scarcity, from engineering to capacity development and partnerships. He has played a crucial role in the operation of the Nile Basin Capacity Building Network Foundation, the NBCBN, which we will hear also about later on in his presentation. We are very curious to hear from you, Professor Felix Mutalo.
Thank you very much, and I greet to everybody. Good afternoon. I don't know whether it's still morning there. Morning, some afternoon. We have had lunch now. So my name is have been introduced by the coordinator or by the coordinator, and I'm at the University of Dar es Salaam, although today I'm working out of the university. I have been asked to talk a little bit about the capacity building initiatives in the Nile Basin, and I thought I would introduce a network which we created since 2000, and it's mainly working in the area of water management. So my presentation will actually look into all those things. Can you go to the next one, please? The next, yeah, my presentation will look into these items, although not in that series, but the concept and the activities will be in there. The next one. So as I said, we are working in the Nile Basin. Nile Basin, and it is a river, you know, it's one of the, it's the longest river actually in the world. And we have some challenges. Water scarcity, as usual, passes through 11 countries or 10 active countries. And as many of us know, we have a catchment area of 2.9 million. And there are a number of tributaries in the upstream, especially in Ethiopia and Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. And these are the ones which supply the water to the Nile River, which handles Sudan and Egypt as well. We have a population of more than nowadays 400 million. But the countries are characterized by poor poverty, rapid growing population, and as a result, we have stress for land when it comes to food to feed all these people. So we have looked into this problem, and it was thought that to be able to handle the problems, especially food, in the next decade or in the next years, we need to be able to manage the little water which we have in the Nile Basin. And for purposes of managing the water, we need both not only capital, but we need human resource, that the technology and people who know what has been done to be able to produce the crops and the food for the growing population. A number of countries you can see on the left-hand side there, we have, these are the countries which are in the Nile Basin, and there have been a lot of initiatives politically and regionally to bring these people together. Nile Basin, can you go to the next slide, please? It's of course habited by a number of different people. I'm talking of different people in terms of culture and the way of doing things, starting from religion, etc., etc. So you can see I have a number of people from the left to the right and to the bottom there. These are people who have different cultures on how to handle things. So to handle different cultures, and meet their demands is not also a very easy issue or easy problem, which means we'll need to have people who can talk the same language, and that is what I'm calling the human resource. All these people are trying now to achieve a sustainable socioeconomic development through equitable utilization of the Nile waters. And for that purpose, we need, let me use the word trained, we need to train people. And what we did, or what we thought was necessary, especially in 2000, when, come to the next slide, please. We started with the IHE. There was an initiative to develop the knowledge networks in the Nile Basin region, especially in river engineering and water resources management. The network, which we tried, but that time we thought it will comprise of researchers and professionals with track record of research and capacity building within water management themes. So the goals and the demands-driven network was to strengthen knowledge and support the communities of practice to generate and implement joint research with tangible outputs. That means if we have people who are knowledgeable, we can talk the same language, and maybe we can solve the problems in the next coming decades. There was a study to find out how many of these people are available and how are they distributed. And I would remember the results at that time showed that when Egypt was talking about 5,000 to 6,000 engineers, scientists, etc., lawyers who are dealing with the water sector, and Sudan was around 4,000. Burundi, which is further north there, had during that time in the 90s when we had that study. So it that we have to train. And the fastest way of training is to share knowledge and share expertise, and that means by networking. So the founder members of the Nile, we founded the Nile Basin Capacity Building Initiative, or Capacity Building Network. And the member countries, you can see 10 countries there. And the institutions from these countries, which were actually initial or founder members, are enumerated there. The Hydraulic Research Station in Egypt. And we had, and now we still have a secretariat which is sitting in Cairo. So come to the next, please. So the main activities of the network were to develop a mature and sustainable regional knowledge network for river engineering professionals from all the 10 countries, applying the concepts of knowledge, networking, and communities of practice. Next, please. Of course, we have to generate the knowledge, and we wanted to support the research clusters. We started off with the clusters. We wanted to support the research clusters and communities of practice in the network in sharing and generating information and knowledge to improve the performance of the individual professionals in their own specific field. So can we go to the next, please? The And then we also wanted to capture and store information and knowledge being produced by the knowledge network, which was being produced by the knowledge networks and communities of practice, and disseminate in all the professionals in the region. One of the key words here is the dissemination. To disseminate, we'll see later how do we disseminate, or if we have a research and we have an output of research, we have findings from the research, how can you send those results to several other countries so that they can practice that one? So we wanted also to support the professionals to become more involved in market-driven regional water sector-related research and development activities. And of course, we wanted also to monitor the network and assess the systems, because each country, as I said, had different culture and different way of doing things, and the speeds, etc., etc. So come to the next, please. So we started off with clusters, and these clusters had different themes which were determined by the members of the clusters themselves. So we could start here. We started in the theme of GIS and monitoring and modeling. This was being led by Egypt, and the institutions which were members of that cluster are shown there in blue. River morphology in Sudan, river structures in Ethiopia, hydropower in Tanzania, flood management in Kenya, and Uganda was given environmental aspects of river engineering. These were the clusters which we started off with, and the clusters were the centers of excellence for research. So the member countries, you can join in many clusters as possible if you have these people and the human resource who can join the research grouping. So from these clusters, go to the next, please. We tried to have initial research topics, and here I have enumerated the research topics which we started off with every cluster. For the river morphology cluster, they started off with sedimentation issues in reservoirs, riverbank erosion, watershed erosion and sediment transport. And hydropower, we started off with the small hydropower plants, how to design and standardize the equipment. For example, generators, we standardize. If you have a small hydropower plant and your power production will be between, let's say, 10 kilowatts to 50 kilowatts, then we standardize the equipment. You have one generator and a turbine, etc., which fits all that range. And then if you go to GIS and modeling applications in river engineering, they started off with floods and the influences on the river system, and then the GIS-based watershed modeling in the Nile Basin countries, and then river structures. They started with micro dams for purposes of water retention, design and operation of diversion systems, environmental aspects of river engineering, issues of EIA, EIA-based practices and guidelines. And for the flood management region, we looked at flood forecasting and the early warning system. For that purpose, we were trying to look at the current best practice tools which you could use, things like GIS, things like remote sensing, etc., data acquisition, etc., from different countries. So go to the next, please, because the time is very short. I have to rush. Sorry for this. So we achieved some successful implementation of these concepts, especially in the capacity building, because for every research topic, we had some students who were aiming or gearing for a degree, an academic degree. So they did a lot of data collection, manipulation of the data, and come up with communities of practice, especially for the professionals. And then we obtained the network. The secretariat was upgraded. After some time, I remember we had an issue with the IHE where we reached the point where we are supposed to be self-reliant, and for that purpose, we managed to register and re-register the secretariat into a trust or an NGO, a regional NGO, which is also based in the same office in Cairo. In 8 out of the 10 countries, we managed to have in-country notes. That means the universities or the institutions which were governed or guiding or leading the research, they managed to bring in other institutions in the country to join in the network. So we managed also to have research clusters. From the 6 research clusters, we have managed to establish more than 200 professionals from all the countries, and all these people now can talk the same language. I'm talking about either hydrology or water morphology or hydropower, etc., etc. Can you go to the next, please? My 10 minutes is coming to an end, so these are some of the achievements, and I think people have or can be given this handout because they can read. But if you give me more time, I can continue finalizing this. So out of the researches, one of the last researches which we are dealing with, especially in our area here, is water scarcity quantification and prediction around the Lake Victoria zone. So we did this in Rwanda and Burundi, and these other countries of Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, the countries which are surrounding Lake Victoria. So we looked at what is actually being called water scarcity. And we said this is mainly caused by insufficient rainfall and the sharp rise in temperature and evapotranspiration in that particular area. And when you talk of evapotranspiration, we are talking about agriculture. So we looked into the how can we index this? How can we talk the same language in terms of water availability? And with the conclusion that for water supply, that is the rainfall, and water demand, that is evapotranspiration for crop production, for agricultural production, we can standardize the indices for these 2 parameters, and this can be used to forecast the water scarcity or to quantify the water availability. For example, the SPI is a tool for all water resource management for their short moisture supplies. And this is also found in some literature. And choice of crops and management direction, rain-fed systems can be also using the SPI. That this index can be used for purposes of indexing the availability of water. And it can be calculated because it's the deviation between the average, the amount of the average monthly rainfall, for example, to the average annual rainfall. And this one will give you a standard deviation, but
we seem to lose Professor Matalo. Professor Matalo, are you there? I think there is some problem with the internet connection.
can you?
Yeah, we hear you, but it's very much broken. Yeah, you're back and then you are muted. Could you please unmute yourself?
Yeah, I'm using a modem from the telephone, and when
Okay.
somebody rings, then it jumps out. Sorry for this, but
Yeah.
for future, we can spend some more time on the discussion. But for future, we are talking about the distribution of the areas under high dry conditions is expected between the to increase towards the central areas of 90 to 21,000, and we have generally the northern part of the Kagera of the north of the Lake Victoria. On the Tanzanian side, we have relatively low degree of dryness and hence favorable rainfall. So what I'm trying to say here is, from the research which we did for looking at water scarcity, we managed to come up with the tools to forecast what will happen in the next decades, and where will it be more or will it be drier? That means we get less water, and where we can get more water. That means these results can be used as a precautionary agricultural planning purposes, whereby you know, especially for our areas where many people are dependent on rainfall irrigation, and if we don't have rain, then it's a drought in that particular area and they have no food for that particular area. So the data we have the results which we got can be used in precaution. Can we go to the last one? So we have also used some tools to earmark the areas which will have less precipitation during those decades which we are talking about, from 2008 to with the baseline of 1970 to 2000. That is the baseline data, and we forecasted for the coming decades. Next. Okay, I think that's the last one. I removed some of the because they were too long, but I removed some of them. But I hope I will be able to when we have the discussion, because the time here is very short. Sorry for taking a little bit longer than the 10 minutes which were given to me.
Thank you very much, Professor Felix Matalo, for your interesting presentation. Yes, I think it's a good idea if our audience have questions or remark or want to continue the discussion, we will move it to the Q&A and the panel discussion. For the sake of time, allow me to move into the next presentation. I would like to introduce Sherin Elvata. Sherin is a Program Design and Coordination Lead at UNDP Egypt. Sherin, she is a water management and governance specialist who has worked as a consultant on water studies that address society, gender challenges, opportunities of inclusion, technological access, adoption of technology, and many other topics. Previously, she worked with the government, international, and also consulting organizations in Egypt, Greece, and in the Netherlands. She holds a master degree in water management and governance from the IHE Delft with a MENA capacity development scholarship. I think in that regard, that's also very interesting for the topic of today's. The floor is yours, please, Sherin.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Am I clear? My voice is clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, it's a pleasure to be here. I felt very humbled when Dr. Maski invited me to be on this webinar because I'm one of the alumni of the MENA Capacity Development Scholarships that actually enabled me to be an IHE Delft alumni. And provided me with the education that makes me able to say that I'm a water management and governance specialist today. My approach on this talk today is a little bit different, maybe less technical than my fellow colleagues and experts. I wanted to focus on how this scholarship was a capacity building effort with me as the receiver. And I wanted to showcase how this has changed my positioning from someone who was passionate about water to really be empowered and equipped with the skills required to actively contribute to the water sector. So I will be sharing some pictures at the end of my personal journey, but very shortly, I wanted to share that before joining IHE Delft, I had been a water and environmental engineer in Cairo University. The government of Egypt was very interested to educate young people in the field of water, but for some reason there is no interest until today. Actually, the water and environmental engineering program in Cairo University barely has around 6 to 7 students per year. This, of course, for water experts like ourselves is very questionable because we really need this skill set, but we don't know why young people are not yet interested in this field. This was not the case for me. I always knew I wanted to work in water, and upon my graduation, it was very difficult to find institutions that work specifically in water, which is also a limitation in terms of capacity building and capacity development, because you could have all of the education you need, but then you don't have the platform where you can practice that education or people who would be providing you with the space to apply what you have learned. But in that case, I spent around 4 years working on environmental projects, which was not specifically and directly connected to water. It included things like waste management, maybe empowering communities to harvest rain, giving a lot of empowerment classes and sessions to farmers, which is one of the easiest ways to create a development program. And however, I felt like my education was not at the level that could empower me to work on projects or ideas myself. When I got the scholarship with IHE and I joined this field of education, the first thing that I have learned because of the scholarship, other than the fact that I met with regional colleagues that were also receivers of the scholarships and others, was the diversity and the variety of the water challenges in different countries. Because usually when you speak of water challenges, we use a big term like water scarcity or water flooding or climate change, and this gives the illusion that the problems are very similar. Which is not true. Every country might be struggling from water scarcity from different perspectives. Water comes in different ways. Some countries have rain, some have groundwater, some have rivers. And water scarcity, the dynamic with this problem is different, because if you're dealing with scarcity of water from the ground, it's very different than dealing with no rain. And by such, the solution and the questions and the problems that come up are completely different. So the first thing I learned was how to diversify the definition of water challenges. It's not just that there is or there is not water. It's much more complex than that. It also taught me how to integrate the social aspect of studies with the technical one. Being an engineer at heart, I've been very well educated on softwares and models that would provide me with the forecasting skills that could help me make decisions. But when I went to IHE Delft, it really was an eye-opener to make you think first about who are the people in need. There was a term that's called marginalized communities that we always ask, or my professors used to always ask, like, identify who is a marginalized community. Who are they? It's not enough to just say women and children. It's not enough to say poor people. What kind of poverty? Is it poverty in food, money? Is it poverty in water? Is it poverty in social rights? We really need to, when we speak of water, we really need to be having this very detailed perspective ourselves, to make that effort before starting to think of or utilize the technical knowledge that we've acquired for solutions. And I think this culture of problem identification was very interesting in the journey of my master's, because I remember we also were educated on how to assess the SDGs and their developments as a region, because of course the region has been facing a lot of challenges in data transparency, data sharing. So we were getting this education on how to understand the SDGs and the indicators, how to contribute to their measurement and assessment. And you could really see how different countries look at the indicators in different ways, and maybe a term that is used globally might actually be understood in very different aspects, which definitely will impact the kind of assessments and the kind of data that would be provided in the end. Without further ado, after my master's, other than the fact that it was a very empowering experience, I was lucky enough to be, nominated as the student body president, and this put me in a position of, I had to really listen to the global perspectives and the cultural differences between everybody, and to handle very difficult truths from different people, all of it always reminds you that when you look at the water problem, you can't just say I have the solution. So this is my biggest gain, that when I hear of a challenge, I need to know what kind of challenge, what are the aspects that we still don't know about, and who are the people that are facing these challenges. I will take you through a couple of personal pictures that I found on my laptop. I wanted to share with you my excitement in the past year and a half. So you can see now, I can make it full screen. You can see this is my excited face in one of the field works. This was actually me working on my master thesis. And I think I saw one of my dear supervisors attending this session, but I don't know if she's still here or not. But this master thesis was an eye-opener because I did it in the Egyptian Delta. My main point of interest in the field of water is to identify the personal value systems of people and how they value water. And by such, what kind of behaviors do they follow to prove that they value water, because I believe that this will be very important in the coming years to understand how individuals show this value and how do they identify the value of the water to be able to influence their behavior. So this thesis was very, this thesis was interesting because I could apply all of my understanding. It was an interdisciplinary one using the WAPOR database by the FAO and IHE, and at the same time understanding the stories of the farmers. So this was the picture on the left was me giving the speech in the opening year of IHE Delft. This wouldn't have been possible without my scholarship, of course, and the fact that you get this empowerment that makes you realize you want to step out of your comfort zone. On the right, I had the opportunity to work with the Netherlands Water Partnership in the Netherlands, and this was in the Dutch Dubai Expo in the Water Pavilion, where we were discussing water scarcity in the MENA region as well, and it was lovely for the team to depend on me as a representative of the region and to give them this localized perspective on the challenges we were facing. This was through some of my fieldwork, and I think I chose these pictures because it's all about the details. When you are in the field and you want to understand the connection between water and other things, you really need to understand like the tiny details. On the left, the orange weed is considered a disease for the plants, and so the women were hired, the women laborers were hired to pull it out. For me to understand really the reality of their situation, I worked with them for a bit, like for half a day, and it was a sticky substance. It sticks to your hands and then it gets it a little bit itchy. And this experience is mainly why I'm doing the work I'm doing, because you need to step into the feet or the steps of the people you are studying. And of course, the difference in size of the wheat on the right was one of the reasons why farmers tended to use a specific seed other than the other one, because they wanted bigger wheat. But local farmers were saying that the one on the right had the better taste, or it held itself together better when they were doing pastries. And so, this was also interesting. Like, is it really about the quantity or is it about the quality for the farmers and for different people we study? This was also some pictures that support the lessons I've learned in IHE about integrating or actually making the center point of your study the people that you're studying. I made it a promise and a personal choice to sit on the ground with the people, to talk to them, to take pictures of their places. I used to sit with them all day and really, really enjoy and notice the technologies and how they are pumping water from the ground and how the lands are looking. I also learned that I have to, no matter what, eat what they eat. It made me, the red plate on the left was actually this tomato fried in ghee, which is a super heavy plate, it immediately brings you cholesterol disease, but I had to eat it and try it because at the time the man was so proud of me tasting his food, and because I was in that in his home and I ate from what he ate and I was with him, he was able to talk to me more openly and to share his real problems with water. This was in Tunisia, where after my graduation as a consultant, I was also equipped to know how to talk with the institutions and the political figures and how to discuss their language and their technical experiences, and to understand how can I introduce different perspectives of the local people into these settings. And then I just went around the world a bit for conferences, and at the moment I'm really, really interested in the African efforts or like the work that involves the African continent together in water cases. And I'm also working very hard to be active on a global level rather than just in the Middle East or in Africa. So as a recap to what I just said, I just wanted to share that this concept of capacity building for challenges, I have been one of the people that have benefited from it. I know that my perspectives if they have stayed the same, I wouldn't have been where I am today. And one of the hardest things about capacity building is to actually understand what other people are doing and understand that there is multiple definitions of one thing. And at the moment, because I am very interested in this valuing water concept, I actually launched a volunteering initiative in Egypt called Dear Waters. It's going to be a social media based short stories, storytelling videos, where we will be speaking with Egyptian people and all over the world, according to the volunteers' geographic locations, to ask them to share with us their stories, and through it subtly understand the value of water and what it means to them, in hopes to create some sort of book or encyclopedia, a small one, about what the different ways people connect with water. And I hope that this is one of the many steps that will come for me in this field and in addressing water scarcity in the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shireen, for a very interesting talk. I'm sure the photos speak 1,000 words. Very interesting to see your personal experience also. And also, I think there will be follow-ups on your proposed initiative on the platform. All of this, I invite our speakers, our audience to join and to follow up with her during the panel discussion. To move on, I would like to invite all of us to move into the panel discussion. Allow me to invite and introduce our convener, Brahim Jirah. Brahim is with Kabi as a Senior Business Manager for Middle East and Africa from Kabi. He helps the organization to expand its coverage and activities in the region. And he's been active for more than 17 years, focusing on initiating new projects and expanding the business development side of the organization. He has also a very strong experience with implementing research and teaching. He teaches himself, and so I think in this sense it's also very relevant, your experience and expertise to contribute to this webinar. Very pleased to have you, Ibrahim, and over to you with the panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Long, and thanks to everyone who contributed to this webinar. It's really exciting, and listening to what you've been saying, really a great sort of information, new information as well, and about what you've been doing, all of you. It's really amazing and admirable. I just wrote down some questions, and obviously over to you as well. Interrupt me at any time if you have any questions. So Rihab, let's start with your presentation where you were talking about the community you have created for the water. And I felt that the community was really directed to decision makers. You have been receiving hundreds, and you only accepted less than a half. So the question, is it meant to be for selective people or decision makers? So if it's yes, do you have a reason behind it? And the second question would be, will you or are you planning to expand the community and the group to go more into the general public and possibly to have more impact? So over to you, Rihab.
Yeah, thank you, Ibrahim. Coming to your first question, the group is open to different experts or people who are interested in water, such as journalists who covers water all the time or want to cover water, people who want to be more knowledgeable about water, not specifically public, because one of the questions that we ask participants to answer is how relevant they are to the water topic in the MENA region. So we are trying to be selective, but we are not closed to decision makers. We are trying to engage researchers, even if they are not in the decision-making position, and get them to connect with decision makers. So this is the idea behind the group, to connect all parties that is interested in water and relevant to the water topic in the MENA region to each other, and make a platform or a space for them to connect and to find each other, facilitate this thing. So this is the thing. Are we going to expand, or do we plan to expand? This was part of our plan since day one, or even before the launching of the community. We have this in mind, that we want it to be sustainable. So how can we do this? And this is why we come up with the idea of having a host after the fund. After we might not receive any fund anymore from IHE Delft, we can find another entity to fund the project and to make it more sustainable. But yeah, the expansion is basically depending on the fund that we are going to receive. I hope I answer your question.
Thank you, Rehab, and I hope you could find a fund and you expand to bigger sort of community, because I think possibly having more of a general public somehow in a different type of membership, possibly that can have an impact on the decision making, because one of the really amazing from Shireen, when she was mentioning that she's going to collect stories from the general public. I think the general public will have different stories to tell, different experiences, and might, have different thoughts to bring even to the experts themselves to see what the other people are talking about water and how they face the scarcity of water or the need of water and so on. Thank you, Rehab. I don't know if Mr. Felix still with us.
Still on.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for your wonderful presentation, Mr. Felix. Really amazing. And especially that you're working in different countries and with different researchers, and it's really exciting. I have a question. In your presentation, you were too detailed sometimes, and it shows how experienced you are and the people involved with you. But I felt there are two types of people into water management you were talking about, and lots of research. We have water issues that can concern the public again, like the first picture you showed. People, there could be youngsters, people drink water, use it for a day-to-day basis. But also you showed and you talked about water for crops, and you emphasized on the importance of water for crops and how to feed more people, especially in those parts of the world. So do you have sort of a strategy, because you're targeting two different type of people, two type of different communities, and research was really, I felt it was directed more for the crops and the farmers, Ministry of Agriculture, and that type of water management. So how would you manage the two types of communities where you talk about water management, and if you have any plan for that?
If I got you well, you're asking about how do we manage the different people with the different cultures and different demands. The issues you saw, we had the different clusters, and these clusters concentrated on different themes. I gave you an example of the initial research topics which they are working on. If you come to the people, and of course the Nile Basin, as I said, one of the major issues in the collaboration, even from the political point of view, is to look at how are we going to feed the population in the coming decades. The population is growing very fast, and of course, we call it development. People would like to be better. That means remove poverty, reduce poverty. People should feed properly, etc., etc. So irrigation, which is, we think, is the way forward, not depending on rain-fed agriculture. Currently, most of the countries, especially the upstream of Egypt and Sudan, are dependent on rainfall agriculture. They only have one crop per year when the rain season comes. And if the rain season fails, then that society or that community has a particular time. Of course, politically, there is an issue of sharing. That means you can transfer food from one country to another. And that's why we normally talk of the politics of water. When we talk of the politics of the Nile waters, we sometimes tell our good friends from Egypt, because they are good farmers, come upstream where we have land, we give them land and more water, and then you produce your wheat or your cotton or your maize from upstream, and then bring the dry, that is the virtual water. People, this concept of virtual water, bring your food to Egypt in the desert. But all in all, to answer your question directly, you're asking how do we manage these people who have different interests or different demands. Yes, each country looks at the demand. There are some country decisions or country strategies. There are some country. The only thing they're interested in, or one of the key baseline things, is the how much water am I going to get from the system. If you talk to Egypt, they will want to see the same amount of water they used to get in 1940 to be flowing now to Egypt for the Egyptian irrigators, for Egyptian farmers. If you talk to Sudan, similarly. But if look at other parameters which have changed, like the population now, if you come up country, upstream of the River Nile, most of those countries were or have now doubled their population since when they got independence. And to feed that population, they need to be able to produce food, which means they are now going to use water. They can no longer continue depending on the rain-fed agriculture. It means we have to go into other possibilities like irrigation. And for purpose of irrigation, you need technology, you need capitalization to have the structures which can be used for the purpose. And that's how we're managing it. Some of these things are local, but for the large things, we said we can do it collaboratively. And there have been initiatives. I think if you are in the picture, you have seen, we started off with the World Bank support in what we call the Nile Basin Initiative. We have the headquarters of Nile Basin Initiative in Entebbe in Uganda. And in that particular case, from the Nile Basin, from the MBI, from the Nile Basin Initiative, there are two areas. One is investment portfolio, and the other one was capacity building initiatives, etc., and agricultural action for the purpose. And of course, don't forget the capacity building. Capacity building, that's where I'm involved. This is the issues of training more people in the area to go into the scientifically modern ways of agricultural production, modern ways of agricultural irrigation. That means to manage the little water which we have to feed the population which is growing fast. I
Mr.
think
Felix.
I touched on your question partially.
Yes, you have. Yes, you have. And that's really assures me with something. But obviously, over to you all to interrupt and put your comments. Because what Shireen did is really amazing. And the questions that she brought up are really interesting. Because what Rehab was saying and what you are saying, Mr. Felix, always to talk about research, farmers, ministries, it's very strategic. What Shireen said, that I was studying and there's much interest in water studies. Students are not really going into water studies. So the question is, I'm feeling that the water issue is still up there, up level with research, decision makers, experts, hasn't come down to the public, not only to give their feedback so we can do or make better policies, but also to feel in love with water and to consider water as something. It is very important, but do they learn it at early stage that much? I remember myself, of course, they teach us how important is the water, but that's it. I think this is my understanding, or maybe, and that goes to Shireen's question now, because the process that she did and all the studies that she went through and the stages and the development. So do we really need more of curriculum development from the younger age, primary school level, to help especially the countries that they have potential water scarcity more than others, to teach more younger students or pupils about water? How can we make water fun? And what you said, Shireen, about the stories, and you're going to try to develop this portal or Instagram project or social media. I really think it's really good idea, because it's going to give value added of water and make it fun, make people, because got social media, you find a lot of nonsense stuff. People watch it more and more because it makes them laugh, because something interesting. How can we make this more important, the water issue generally, so public can read about it, listen about it, watch it, and then that will drive people to study more about water. So what is your view on this, Shireen? Did you feel that the water studies is very strategic, then isn't that popular as a subject? You're on mute, yeah.
Thank you very much for your kind observations and your kind comments. Well, I remember that one of the first things we learned in our masters was something very funny, actually. Everybody, when they're a child, they learn about the water cycle, that there's rain that falls, and then the plants have it, and then they get it out with photosynthesis, and then it goes up to become a cloud, and then the rain happens, or the rivers evaporate, and then it rains. And the funny thing, the discussion in my master program was actually discussing how the water cycle is not a global one. It's a very specific one for a very specific atmospheric system. In Egypt, for example, this is not the water cycle. It rains twice a year. As if someone coughed in your face. It's not really intense. It's like a very, very, very light rain. So this is not the water cycle. If we follow the water cycle, this means that there will be rain almost every couple of months. This is more relevant to some of the European landscapes, or some of the I don't remember the term, but like the Amazon and things like this. So moving from that, every child has grown up learning about water from the vision of a water cycle that does not necessarily apply to their own environment, that does not necessarily apply to their own ecosystem. So if we discuss how can we raise the interest, we need to be providing accurate, hands-on information of water that people experience in their own local environments. That is my idea. Because if you have a disconnect from water science when you're a child, you see a water cycle that does not happen in your house, or in your country, how can you feel this connection with water? You feel already that it doesn't apply to you. So in a way, you move it to the side. But of course, if we talk from practical aspects, definitely game-based education, education that requires you to be in nature, to witness things with your own eyes, and to really experiential learning is very important when it comes to water. In areas like Egypt, which is facing a lot of water scarcity, and we have mostly deserts more than greenery, it's difficult to have this because you cannot go and hang out in a park. You might have 1 or 2 parks that are not necessarily public, and there's a lot of demand on them, so it's hard for you to include it as part of the curriculum for the thousands and thousands of children that are in the education system. But creating game-based virtual reality programs that would make you connect with different scenarios of water, to understand why this water cycle applies to you but does not apply to others, to understand that the water situation is not the same everywhere. I thought, and I consider myself an educated person, I thought until I attended my master's that everybody was using, the modern toilet. When I attended IHE Delft, I realized not a lot of people do this. Like, there's so many people that don't have this access. So just to wrap up, how can we make water more fun? How can we make it more educational? Definitely, there is a huge need to address children in education. I actually believe that targeting farmers has become this, I would be brave enough to say it's like a cup that has been filled to the max. You now go to the farmers and they know what kind of education they might be receiving. Maybe targeting the younger population will be of more effect in terms of the fields, of course, not the agricultural water management, but when it comes to water awareness as a whole. And in terms of the initiative that we're working on now with Dear Waters, yes, this is really, the comments you said were really what we're trying to do, is to, in Egypt, for example, there is this sugarcane juice, and sugarcane juice is a staple. Anybody who goes to Cairo, they try it, and it's a really local, delicacy. It's cheap and everybody loves it. So we were thinking, how can we, if we go to a man who has this small shop in a small alley, and he talks about how he's having, how many cups of sugarcane juice he sells every day, and if he has a water shortage, how many will be less, and how many years has he been supporting his household because of the shop. By him telling the story to the people, they will, first of all, connect to the sugarcane juice. Everybody has positive experiences with it. And second, it will be a subtle message that, okay, the importance here is if there is no water, he will not be able to support his family, and we will not be able to have fun. And actually, and interestingly enough, having fun is a very important value of water psychologically. So even if you tell people that because water might not one day exist, for example, this is an overstatement, but you will not be able to spend your summers in the sea, this has a higher chance of influencing and affecting people than just telling them save water because water is becoming scarce. So I guess it would just be important to really connect with the reality of every person, and address the changes and the differences globally, create this connection from young age, and just stick to that reality. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, Shireen. We have a lot of questions from the attendees, but before I do that, if I may, of course, I introduce Dr. Scott from IHE. He's an associated professor of hydroinformatics. His main research interest includes hydrological ensemble prediction, and anticipatory water management and flood forecasting. I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name or anything for your specialty, Dr. Scott, and also Mr. Shidar with a background in hydraulics, hydrology, and mechanics. He's got MSc and PhD in hydroinformatics. Dr. Masaki developed expertise in modeling water resources systems and application of modeling of floods, drought, and climate change impact assessment. So floor, is open, so we're going to put the questions. But if you have anything to say, Dr. Scott or Dr. Schilder, please go ahead. We're happy to hear you before I just jump to the questions of the public. We still have about 17 minutes for
Yes. Thank you, Ibrahim. Well, I thought I wanted to come back to your earlier question on whether we have a way of connecting the strategic and large scale and water availability oriented research towards the local scale and the impact to the people on the ground in the livelihoods. And I don't know if it is the way, but I do think I have an idea on one way of what IHE is trying to support, and what also the networks that we're also discussing here, the capacity development networks, are trying to support, like the Now Basin Capacity Building Network, is I think that we try to have in our master programs that are master programs for water resources management, we bring together students, and in the projects of Now Basin Capacity Building Network, we bring together researchers. But then in the topics, so in the research of the MSc research topics, or in the projects that MBCBN is engaging in, so those are research projects, those are then as a next step focusing on, for example, local case studies and on the ground impact and local livelihoods. And I think in that way I've been privileged in the past years to be involved with the Now Basin Capacity Building Network, and also with the MENA Water Scarcity online network that they presented. And I am quite enthusiastic of that model. Yes, and I'm curious to see feedback from the people online and in the panel.
Oh, thank you, Scott. And that's a little bit of one question was addressed to IHE researchers. I suppose it's less common to see interdisciplinary professionals working on water scarcity in the region. Where do you see the value of cross-disciplines professionals, and how to increase the number of professionals in the sector from capacity building perspective?
Yeah, maybe I will also add into that, and particularly also this interdisciplinary question. Actually, IHE is probably one of the best place you can see when this interdisciplinary studies comes in under the umbrella of water. So we have expertise and as well as master's program and also do the research, also PhD level research and so forth. That covers not only the more traditional, let's say the water issues related to hydraulics, hydrology, so forth, but we have expertise on a lot other aspects like the water governance, water management, water diplomacy, and so forth. So some of the questions the people who are posting these questions and following the webinar, I really invite you to browse through our website, IHE Delft website, and see the type of the various interdisciplinarity. You see the courses that we offer at IHE Delft, and also in our more current programs, the flexibility that the students have to take courses from very different disciplines. You can see that as well. And some of the thing I would add is, for example, Sarin is of course an excellent example of how we helped the developing capacity in the region under this MENA capacity development program we had. And then a couple of things you mentioned was really, I think, mentioning to again, worth mentioning again. One thing I really picked up is water scarcity is not just only about the physical thing. So it's not only too little water is an issue, but even if you have abundant water, if we do not manage it properly, and if we do not have proper governance, you will have a problem. So it is more of the not only too little water, but it's also about the inequality in access and distribution, and how we manage it properly. So I think that's a very important point to keep in mind. And another thing is also the also comes into the equality again, finding the expert in more technical side, and includes the water as well. The female researchers, female expert from the region is very difficult, and that was one of the things we tried our best in our MENA CD program. We really managed to have 50-50 participation for our both master's scholarships and as well regional short courses, from male and female applicants we have. So and that really the another word that I also picked up from Sarin is empowering. So that really empowers people, and you see the contribution from different perspectives, different aspects, and only that helps to solve very let's say the complicated issues of solving water problem. It's applied in everywhere, but also in the region for sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Schiller. I have a question of what you're saying, and I just wanted to confirm. So you have, obviously, people will apply for your courses, short courses and masters, but also you mentioned you have online courses and content to be used by people from around the world. So just wanted to confirm those are open access and they're accessible, they're free to be used by anyone. Is that right?
Oh yeah, that's very good point, Brian. Yes, we do have online courses as well. Some of the thing I was mentioning was part of under the program, so they funded through this DUPC 2, under which we are now organizing this webinar. Those were based on fellowships provided through the program, but IHE do have online courses as well. Some of them are open source and some of them are not. But the tendency to the IHE going towards are making more and more online courses open access. So that's, but we have currently both type of courses, online, open access, and also based on fees or fellowships.
Thank you so much. We do still have some questions, but some of the questions might have been answered half-half. So Mr. Felix Metallo say, there's a really nice one here. It says it's impressive to see the involvement of many countries, given the different, sometimes contrasting interests of each nation. What is your experience of bringing people together for collaboration? What are the common interests? I think you have mentioned that earlier. So what is your experience, very quickly, in 1 minute, Mr. Felix, in bringing people together for collaboration, of course?
Of course, thank you. Initially, as I said, people have different cultures and different backgrounds and poverty levels. So even when we want to do research and we have researchers from different countries, the mentality or the feeling on what we are going to do may be different in the different scientists or the different people we are working with. So slowly you get to know each other. And I used to tell my students when we started of this inter-country programs, even master's programs where you have different students from different countries, especially regional master's programs like the Nile Basin people, or in the Southern Africa, we have another one of SADC countries. That issue of bringing the people together, bringing the scientists to one forum or bringing them at one point, it has also an advantage, not only in terms of water availability, in terms of, but even from the political point of view, and in terms of they will not fight. I always tell them, if you hear in Africa, many of the countries, there are some skirmishes here and there, people fighting, tribes fight, etc. But once the students are in the same class, they know each other. I've been teaching for quite a number of years now at the University of Dar es Salaam, and we had all these multi-country programs. And I'm happy to say that today, if I go to any country in the ministries of water, I find a student who knows about us or who has been to our program at that time. And now I'm happy that many countries have established their own programs of teaching or creating capacity in their own country. For Ethiopia, for example, they immediately started, we used to get a lot of students from Ethiopia, but nowadays Ethiopia started off about 17 universities, and most of them are teaching something on water. If you go to Uganda, they also have several number of new universities, and they're also teaching something on water. So what I'm trying to say is, my experience is, only we are talking about water availability in terms of volume and quality and quantity, but that bringing people together has another dimension. It creates another environment where people will not fight, if I use those words. People will know each other, people will work together, people will help each other.
Thank you, Mr. Felix. Shireen, you've got another 2 questions, and try to make them sort of a one. So one says, do you keep in touch with the peers from the scholarship program? It seems like there's someone from the scholarship himself. I'm curious to hear about the following up activities from the group. It seems, yes, I think you're here because of the alumni. So I think he curious about how do you follow up activities from the group. And that takes you to the next question, Shireen, as well, is about what would you say water scarcity mean in Africa? Because you mentioned earlier that it has different meanings, water scarcity. It could be either drought or it could be, there's water underground, like you were saying. And that is another question from the same person. From your engagement, do you think giving a big priority to women and youth would help solve water scarcity in Africa, at least by 70%? I think we were talking earlier about, people don't have that much interest in water studies and so on. So over to you, I think, for those 3 little questions.
Okay, I'll try to be very short about this and to the point. First of all, in terms of being in touch with my fellow colleagues, well, when you go to IHE, you make friends and you stay in touch. So yes, we are still in touch in this friendly sense. We follow each other on LinkedIn. We share our updates with each other, but it's not only about the scholarship, it's about IHE as a whole. And through this, you make sure to be part of all the alumni events. You try to be there to support your friends if they need anything. This is part of the network that we create in water. The second point about the water scarcity means in Africa, I actually have a little bit of a controversial or questionable perspective about this, but I will share it with you guys. It's a personal one. It doesn't have to be supported by science. However, in my kind opinion, I believe that water scarcity in Africa is that it is actually it is a real and a very big challenge, but it's also struggling a little bit with this expectation that Africa should be like the global north with rich water resources and with a lot of rain. It does not put into consideration the differences in a huge continent like Africa, where there are very different dynamics of the water and sources of water. So when you are being compared with, you know, if I am being compared with a fish in my swimming skills, I will never be as good or considered a professional fish. So it's just, this is the point I'm trying to make, that water scarcity is real, we face it, but it has also I think it's it has not appeared out of nowhere. It was because of economic development. It was because of increase in population. It was because of a growing the growth of countries all over the continent, and now we need to adapt and react to this change. So that is why we have to be very agile facing the challenges, because of course it has connections with climate change. It has to, most of my work proves this. Like, I truly believe in this connection, but I also believe that the problem, if we keep looking at it as just the problem of water scarcity, we think of it as a given. But if we rephrase it by saying that this is a reality that we are dealing with, and we start to, rather than try to prevent it, we try to live with, create a different approach to the general situation. And my last comment about the women and the youth, definitely speaking about women is very important, and speaking to women about water is very important. But it depends on which context and how this communication will take place. Because in different countries, there is very high levels of involvement for women in agriculture, for example, or in education, water education, and in institutions. And in others, we don't find this presence. But I don't think that we still have to include them, because I can see that most of the development projects and most of the projects in general look and put a lot of effort in including women and children in their projects. I think it would be better to start focusing on how to put the women and the men together in the same sessions, not making it like there's a difference. Because I faced two funny stories through my work, and these will conclude my point. In in Tunisia, I was talking with an institution, and they were telling me, we are so good at gender, equality, and we include women in all of our trainings and stuff. And so I was telling them, that's amazing. Like, what have you done? And they said, we did a course about how to follow modern agriculture systems, and we had 5 women with us, and we were talking about how to mitigate water scarcity. Women have to be involved. So I told him, that's perfect. How many men were in the session? And then he said, no, it was just women. So I think this defeats the purpose. Like, we need to include men in this session to understand really how women can be. I'm sure women know how they are involved in this challenge, but the men might not necessarily be very aware. So I told him that very kindly, and we laughed about it, but it was funny, not that we're targeting women. That doesn't mean take them into a secret room and train them alone. It's about integrating them into the overall system. And the other story in Egypt was, I was talking to a farmer about, actually this was in my thesis, and that's one of my favorite stories. I was talking to a farmer about how he knows he needs to change his seeds in agriculture and how to, irrigate well. And he was telling me that, I look at the seed and I see the size and I know how to decide, and because of my experience and stuff. And then I was asking him, have you ever changed a behavior you did in irrigation or in your seeds at any point because of anything? And then he was like, yes, of course. My wife, when she takes the wheat seeds and she blends it to make dough, if she doesn't like how it holds itself together, she asks me to change it. So I find a different type of seed. So of course, for me as an academic, I saw the direct connection that the woman affected his behavior. She changed his decision. But when we go back, I asked him again, okay, so what influences your decisions in water and practices? And he was like, I look at the seed, I look at the plant, I decide, and I follow my, ancestral knowledge. He's so detached from the fact that the decision directly was influenced by his wife. So yeah, this I leave you with those. Thank you.
No, don't bring that topic, because it takes how the wives actually, influence the next decisions. Yeah. Anyway, so time is really running. People are commenting to your comments, Shireen. Well done. We had few questions, but you covered them.
May I add up a little bit? May I add up a small thing on what she has just said? Yes, we are talking about water scarcity in terms of availability, etc. But we have not looked at the temporal. If you look at rain-fed agriculture, which is dependent upon most of the countries in the south of the Nile Basin, if I call it that way, if the rainfall is delayed by a week or 2 weeks, the farmers already will complain, and you can understand that the season, it will be a problem. That is, later it can fall, we can have a lot of rain, but since it came at the wrong time, then we have a problem. And that one can be also considered during the analysis of the water scarcity. So this is what we are trying to look at when we look at what we are nowadays calling the climate change, which is not of the farmers making. That means we need to know a little bit more of the dynamics of how the globus is operating, how the globus is reacting to what has been changing. I mentioned in the slide there that the issue is temperature and precipitation. Those two things are being influenced by what is happening not only in Africa, but maybe happening somewhere else in the globus. So when we deal with water scarcity, we also have to look into the cessation and the onset of the precipitation itself, that is the rainfall.
Thank you, Mr. Felix. I think it's very important. We all know how important the crop is, not only for people who are going to use it and eat and eat it and use it for their day-to-day life, but also for the farmers, for their business, because they live out of that little crop. They get it once a year. And I think something really important in this webinar, thank you everyone for contributing, and thank you, Long, for organizing this. I felt we took the water issue just out of just agriculture and crop. We talked about how it impacts youth and women, society, and so on, which is so important. And that's, I think, the way forward to make water more aware of and people be interested in it. I know we are running out of time, but I really would like to ask this question, which it was given to the panelists, and I would like to direct it to Scott, which is out of water. So working in DUPC with the MENA region and obviously in Africa generally, how did you find working in the region and implementing these capacity building projects and so on? What are the challenges really that you from IHE faced, and how do you think we can resolve it in the future? And I think with that we will finish all the questions. Over to you, Scott.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for the question. No, so I enjoyed it a lot, and I have very positive experiences with that. And I think given more time, both Professor Mtalo and myself, we could and Rhea, we could refer to a session we had just 3 weeks ago, where we brought together MSc research students from all over the basin. And their supervisors, mentors, and it was simply an inspiring session on relevant topics. So that is has been my experience all the time. So maybe to keep the part of the challenges short is, once you overcome those challenges and you do get together either online or face to face, I have a full and good and positive experience on that. To mention just one challenge that I also wanted to put forward also to us and in the session, I do see a challenge for capacity building and especially network activities on the sustainability of financing those. And that has been a challenge throughout and will remain a challenge, I think, for us and all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Stu. Scott, it has been a really wonderful session for me, great webinar, and also some good comments about it. I think all the inputs from all the people and from different perspectives and angles is really fruitful for all of us. So thank you very much again. It has been a pleasure for me to be with you. And I would like to pass the mic to Long to finalize the webinar. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you very much, Brahim, and also a big thank to our panelists for a very interesting panel discussion. I feel that we could and we should extend, but for the sake of time, I think we save it for now, and hopefully we'll be in touch also with other session. We would like to thank our speakers and audience for a very interesting session and also very inspiring discussion with your great questions. I'm sure the insights will be very relevant to many of us, not only working in the MENA region, but also beyond. I would like to take also this opportunity to thank the DUPC2 program for organizing and supporting this very meaningful series of webinar, and we hope to stay in touch. To close up, I would like to invite Ms. Ellen Zwever, the Program Support Officer from the DUPC2 program, to have some closing remark. Over to you, please, Ellen.
Yes, thank you very much, Long. And I will echo all of the words that you've just spoken, both you and Brahim. So thanks to everybody for joining and for all of the panelists for being here as well. We would also take the opportunity to thank Long as well as the DUPC for being with us and hosting all of these sessions, not just today's session, but all of the previous sessions. So this was the last webinar under DUPC, so under the second phase of the program. But no worries, we will continue under the third phase of the program, which has already started. So once any event or webinar is hosted here, then we will inform you in due time. So yeah, thanks again to everybody. Thanks to the panelists, Long, and all of the participants. And we hope to go on to many more sessions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.